So, hello, Fabian. I have with me Fabian Libeau, the VP Sales of Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Axonius.
Correct.
Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for inviting me. Brilliant. Love it.
And, it's a nice chance to have a bit of a chat after the panel that we had and catch up a bit of what exactly you're doing.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay, so basically, I know that you have attended quite a few events after COVID-19. I met you at Dublin Tech Summit. What are your thoughts? Did you come across any new trends? What people talk about, basically?
Yeah, I think the first thing I experienced is that everybody was so happy to meet up in person again. I think this personal component of the business. I mean, we're in a business, I'm in the cybersecurity business, you're working with customers. Even though it kind of worked via Zoom, a lot of people really wanted to go back and just meet people face to face. So that was the first thing. It was not so much the technology impact, it was more like, people just love being back, being with people. What we also saw is that there was a huge shift in how businesses are operating these days after the pandemic, right? It happened during the pandemic. Everything went remote. A lot of services that could never leave the building out of the sudden were available remotely. And so what we saw is really that the first question is, after COVID, what is our network, right? So nobody really knows. Nobody really knows what's on the network anymore. The good old times where everything is in the office building, they're past. What we also saw is that people had to find solution quite quickly to solve problems. And the easiest way is by a SaaS, right? You just need to ramp up a service. What are we doing, right? Buy some hardware, rent some hardware, get stuff going, or we just, rent a solution that is exactly doing what we want to do. So we saw a lot of that. And because of this added complexity of, IT security couldn't really cope with it. I mean, they had to get up all these VPN concentrators. They had to do all this and that and the others, roll out laptops with antivirus to send to their employees and so on. So what we saw is that ransomware became a huge issue during the pandemic, right? Because cyber criminals, that really didn't have anything else to do, right? It was a chance for them. And also a lot of organizations weren't really well prepared for that. So we saw a lot of ransomware, and it was quite a thing 2-3 years ago to get a cyber insurance and just get insured against those cases. But what we see these days is that this cyber insurances won't cover ransomware anymore. Right? So the big trend. I was talking to some underwriters, and they just said, no, we don't do that anymore. And if we do that, they have to show us really how secure they are, and they have to pay a huge premium.
Okay, so tell me a bit about your background. What intrigued you to get into the cybersecurity sector?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm doing cybersecurity for 25 years.
Okay, right? That's a long time.
It's a long time. And I started because I had my own company, right? So we founded, 3 guys founded a reseller in my kitchen, right? So, and we were reselling PBX. We were reselling hard disk recording systems for music, and we were reselling security. And after a couple of months, it was more or less purely security. And at that point, firewall was a thing. And, we installed the first VPNs with triple deaths, where you still had a key escrow with the US. And, antivirus and all this. This was really the thing at that point. And, I grew then into more management solution. I'm not sure if anybody still knows X500 directory services, right? It was a thing at that point. PKAs were a point. And in 2002, I joined the first vendor. It's for the past 20 years, I'm working mainly for US vendors, and especially there in the security management space. I was doing a lot of SIEM, so security information event management systems. I was spearheading in Europe, at least, the external attack surface management approach with Risk IQ. And now I'm with Axonius, which is, everything about assets. Yeah.
Okay. So what does Axonius do exactly?
So we're trying to solve a very old, maybe boring problem, which is asset management. And we take it from the cybersecurity point of view, because IT typically says, oh, this is supported. If it's not on our inventory, not on our list, it's not supported, and we don't care. Security, of course, can't say that, because if you have a ransomware in your network, at the end, you have to find it and you have to figure it out. So what we do is really we try to find all the assets, and there's many devices, users, but also SaaS applications that belong to your organization, so that you can figure out what is the status of it. And with that, then you can figure out, okay, not all of our endpoints have antivirus installed or endpoint protection installed, or we have devices on our protected network that are not protected. So it's asset management, and Gartner is now calling this space cybersecurity asset attack surface management. So there's this new area of attack surface management, where we have external attack surface management. We saw now companies doing software development, attack surface management. So, but we do cybersecurity asset attack surface management. Okay.
So regarding SaaS management, how do you prevent cyber attacks?
Yeah, it's a tough question, because as we know, if you go into the cloud, you can get an infrastructure as a service, you can get a platform as a service, where you own a lot of the application and the infrastructure and the hardware, depending on what you're doing. With SaaS, you just get a service. So there's not much you can do about protecting the platform, protecting the infrastructure, protecting the application itself, right? The only thing you can do as a customer of that platform is really ask for reports, right? Are you ISO certified? Are you SOC 2 certified? You may get a report from the latest vulnerability scan. You may get a report from a pen test. So, but a lot of those things, it's not in your hand. What you can do is all about how securely is the application configured. So what you can do, right? And how secure is the access to that application? These are the main thing that is under your control. And there's now a best practice guide about how to secure a SaaS application. But at the end of the day, you can only make sure that you use multi-factor authentication and you configure the product correctly. And we as Axonius have a product that helps you understand what kind of SaaS applications do you have, how are they configured, are there any risks in there where that may lead to a breach.
Okay. Can you give us examples of real cases? What happened and how was prevented? You don't have to mention companies' names, of course, but it will be nice to hear what exactly happened and how you actually prevent not to happen, actually?
Yeah, what I think one of our some of the and it's not just with a single customer. I think it's across multiple customers. I think this whole, especially during COVID, this whole rollout of endpoint protection was a real challenge, right? So sometimes you replaced another product, where you just took the list of endpoints that the other product has and put into the new one. But what we see at customers then, that they only know about 60 to 80% of the endpoints. Yeah, and just like, oh, where did this come in? And what we then help them is to identify all the endpoints, to help them then remediate that, and to create an ongoing process, because just a one-time snapshot doesn't help, but an ongoing process that when there are 5 new laptops, been registered in the infrastructure that we know about, and just tell them, please roll out endpoint protection to that. So it's an easy thing. The other thing we saw with ransomware is that IT was really good in rolling out endpoint protection and rolling out backup, clients to back up. So if there's ransomware, then so what, we've got a backup. But what we found with a lot of customers is, yes, they rolled it out, but the backup client didn't call back home for a month or 2 months. So we have this time gap where it's a real challenge. What we also saw is that because of the SaaS rollout, a lot of companies did the right thing, but they couldn't really monitor it. For example, we had a customer with Salesforce, right? Very common, as a CRM tool. And their policy was that all customers have to use Okta. It could be another identity provider as well, or single sign-on as well, but it has to use Okta. But when we compared what Okta did and what's in Salesforce, we figured out that only 80% of the users were configured in Okta, and there were the service accounts and all the other things, and admin accounts that weren't going via Okta. And it's just like, if you know that as an organization, you can sign up and say, yeah, we're taking the risk, we are aware of that. But if you're not, then it's a real challenge. And what we saw was SaaS application, especially in Europe, which is a real concern, is data sprawl. So you've got a SaaS application like a CRM system, let's say a Salesforce again, and somebody just registered with a reporting tool, right? And the reporting tool pulls data out of Salesforce and creates phenomenal charts. But the reporting tool was never, approved by IT or IT security. It's just been there. It's super easy. Just do 5 clicks, all the data goes over. And we saw that as a customer where, of course, the CISO wasn't happy about it because they never looked into the reporting, solution to make sure it is secure.
Okay, going through the website, I came across a quote from Doug Graham, Chief Trust Officer of Lionbridge. I would take the line that says, without a tool like Axonius, we would spend time arguing about the data than looking into the underlying problem. What is the meaning behind these words?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting statement, and it's very true. And if you don't have the context, it's hard to understand. But there's this famous tweet, right, where the CISO asks, how many Windows hosts do we have? And he asks 5 departments and gets 5 different answers, right?
Okay.
The SIM guy says, oh, we've got 5,000. The AV guy says, oh, we have 6,000. So it's kind of, it's just the problem quite often is that you don't really know what you're talking about, right? So, and as I said, what we see is that only, for example, 60 to 80% of the endpoints at customers are really protected by the endpoint protection. So the data, when the CISO asks, are all my endpoints protected by our endpoint protection? The answer of the people running the endpoint protection, of course, will be, oh yeah, all the endpoints we know about, and that's the data, are protected. And so, that's what it is. we argue about the data. So do we have 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 endpoint? But we're not looking to the problem, which is how many do we really have, and how many are not protected, or how many are not managed, or how many are not right configured, or things like that. And that's really the meaning behind the words.
Okay. What the future holds for Axonius? So
Axonius is, according to different sources, one of the fastest growing cybersecurity startups there at the moment, right? Or there is at the moment. So Axonius is super successful in the United States at the moment, and the decision was made last year to expand globally. Yeah, so I've started beginning of this year to we had people on the ground in Europe, but to build a European team, to grow the European team, to really strategically look into Europe. I've got a peer in Singapore who was hired to build the Asian Pacific team. So we're expanding, geographically at the moment. What we also saw is that we launched our SaaS product this year. So until end of last year, we only had a solution that covered devices and users. Now we're covering devices, users, and SaaS applications. So we really want to become the system of records for as many possible data points, and so devices, users, and SaaS application is what we're doing at the moment. There will be an expansion, and we see that we're becoming more integrated in the processes, not just for security, but also IT, right? So we worked hard on being able to enrich CMDBs. So CMDB in the IT space is kind of a sore point, right? So because it's never accurate, there's always something missing, a lot of manual work, which means, people won't, keep it up to date all the time. So we see a lot of projects at the moment where we help enriching CMDBs and helping IT teams. And, for us as a cybersecurity team, of course, that took some heavy lifting because it's just a different way of thinking, of operating. But, we're there now, and, we're pushing forward to become a system of records for organizations.
Okay. And, before we close, what advice will you give everyday people on protecting their data?
You know what? I think being surrounded by people who are not necessarily cybersecurity pros, I think the biggest issue is don't trust anybody on the internet. If it sounds too good to be true, it will definitely not be true. Yeah, I think that's number one. You get emails, don't click on it. Don't trust anybody on social media. It's, the bots are so good. And we had that example I think it was in Germany, where one of the ministers there fell for a deep fake of Vladimir Klitschko, right? They were talking for 15 minutes and thought they were talking. So you can't trust anybody on the internet. That's number one. Number two is, invest in an endpoint protection product, even, for your laptop, and do backups, right? So I think that's it. I mean, I just went through quite some pain because there was no backup. Right, so with one of my relatives, was just like, okay, when was the last backup? I'm just like, oh yeah, I've forgotten about that. But yeah, you can still do it, right? It's like, no, not really. No. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much for today. It was a pleasure, and I hope I will see you soon in an event.
Thank you so much for having me today. Yes.
Thank you, Fabian. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.